Shenmue 2 is my personal favorite entry in the Shenmue series so far, and one of my favorite games of all time. It's got an amazing sense of adventure. It makes players feel like they've been transported to another place in time. In a sense, that's absolutely true. I decided to do a deep dive into two real-world locations that no longer exist, but are present in Shenmue 2. About halfway into the game, Ryo travels to the walled city of Kowloon. Here, he makes his way through the densely populated buildings, encounters memorable characters, and discovers some interesting architectural designs. The real city went through several phases throughout its history, starting as an outpost for salt trading around 1,000 years ago. It eventually became a Chinese military fort that later fell under British control in 1912. Britain adopted a hands-off approach to the walled city, which allowed the city to grow and operate under no regulations or oversight from the Chinese government whatsoever. It's like one of my improvised DIY home improvement projects, except expanded to an entire city. People from mainland China and neighboring countries flocked to Kowloon as a way to start a business, make a living, and get their foot in the door to Hong Kong. During the occupation of Hong Kong by Japanese forces during World War II, the wall of Kowloon was demolished, and the stone was used to expand the nearby Kai Tak airport. More on that later. Fun fact, the name Kowloon is derived from the Cantonese term for 9 dragons. Sound familiar?
Hello?
Father's heaven.
9 dragons.
The lack of regulation led to a labyrinth of hallways lined with apartments and businesses, most of which were around 200 square feet in size. All of the buildings in Kowloon were connected through a series of intricate hallways and tunnels. You could actually travel from one side of the city to the other without touching the ground. The water and electricity were also shared amongst the occupants of the city. Lack of regulations subsequently led to an abundance of self-taught dentists. It also led to an abundance of opioid use and brothels. Between 1950 and 1973, crime in the city's underbelly was rampant, with the city being ruled by triads running illegal drug operations. The reign of the triads was eventually brought to an end in the late 1970s because of aggressive police tactics in conjunction with cooperation from the community. Children who grew up within the city walls knew not what life was like on the outside. They made the best of life by playing in the hallways and on the rooftops of buildings. At its height, the city was home to as many as 50,000 people, all crammed into 6.4 acres of land. It was the most densely populated place on the planet. In fact, the population density was a whopping 44 times that of Manhattan. In 1984, Kowloon City once again came under the control of the Chinese government after the Sino-British Joint Declaration. Shortly afterwards, plans to demolish the city were constructed, citing sanitary reasons, among other things. In Shenmue 2, Ryo arrives in Kowloon in the year 1987, only 6 years before demolition began, and that's part of the mystique surrounding the walled city. Today, it only exists in photos, film, and video games like Shenmue 2. This scene from the 1993 film Crime Story, starring Jackie Chan, was filmed in Kowloon after the city was vacated and before it was demolished. The city was also used in other popular films such as Bloodsport, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. To my knowledge, Kowloon isn't featured as prominently or as authentically in any other game as it is in Shenmue 2. This is quite impressive considering it was built for the Dreamcast. Runner-up for Kowloon representation in a video game is Call of Duty Black Ops. Not bad. After Kowloon's demolition, the Kowloon Walled City Park was created in its place. Only one original structure still stands in the middle of the park. Although the park is much more pretty than the architectural hodgepodge of Kowloon, a part of me wishes it were still intact, if nothing else, as a curious tourist attraction. At least an awesome arcade opened up later in Japan called Warehouse Kawasaki that recreated the look of Kowloon down to the tiniest detail. Well, it was open. Sadly, like the city this arcade is based on, it too shut down. Warehouse Kawasaki closed its doors on November 17, 2019, only 2 days before the launch of Shenmue 3. Now on to our next destination. Another real-world location featured in Shenmue 2 that no longer exists is the Kai Tak Airport. Although Ryo never visits this location specifically, The low-flying commercial airliners in Hong Kong are a tell of its presence. It was the official airport of Hong Kong from 1925 to 1998. Because of the airport's geological location, airplanes had to fly in low, making the landing gear easily visible to those on the ground. The planes flew so low that it is said that passengers could see the screens of television sets in apartments as they flew overhead. Incoming planes flew directly over Kowloon City, which is why the buildings in Kowloon couldn't be taller than 13 or 14 stories. The landing was very technically demanding for pilots, which included a 47-degree right turn, followed shortly by touchdown. It was so demanding that it had to be done manually, as the maneuver could not be executed using aircraft instruments. This is why the History Channel ranked Kai Tak the 6th most dangerous airport in the world. The airport closed on July 6, 1998, when a newer, less deadly one opened up. However, when Rio travels to Hong Kong and Shenmue 2, Kai Tak Airport is in full operation and would continue to be for another 11 years. Now when you see the airplane flying right over Rio's head, you might have to take pause and remember the history behind it. There's something strangely fascinating about these unique man-made spaces, from the dilapidated structures of Kowloon to the dangerous Kai Tak Airport. They will always be remembered as they were because of games like Shenmue 2, which function not only as a form of entertainment, but also as a time capsule from the late 1980s. Because we can't visit these places today, the best way to experience them now, while we wait for someone to recreate them in VR, is through Shenmue 2, which originally launched on the Sega Dreamcast in 2001, a full 7 years after Kowloon City was demolished and 3 years after Kai Tak Airport was closed. I always loved Shenmue 2 and its attention to detail, but now I have a fuller appreciation for it as a way for us to experience places that no longer exist. Thank you for watching. Please give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it or learned anything new, and I'll see you soon.